Well, joining us live now is former US Navy SEAL and former FBI Special Agent Jonathan Gilliam. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. We just heard there, looking at what is next. But if we can go back to the operation, in your opinion, how do you describe the capture from what we've heard of Nicolas Maduro and his wife regarding the operation?
Well, I think it shows the expertise of the United States military, and not just the military, but the intelligence organizations and federal law enforcement, how we are so primed at working together, and how over the years, when we look back, the first Gulf War, for instance, and how we had all these issues with communications, even through 9/11, when it came to how we responded to that and the difficulty in communicating the different groups. It shows you how well things have improved, and how precise we can be in targeting one specific enemy or one part of an enemy without injuring the location around them. And the rehearsals of these operations and the buildup to this has been going on for quite some time in the Caribbean. So it's interesting that even though the buildup was there, the demonstrations were happening with our air power right off the coast of Venezuela, and the warning was there, we still had the ability to go in unexpectedly and do such a precise operation with so many different units coming together to successfully carry out a strike like this.
And some people are saying that this is unconstitutional. We're hearing so many mixed stories and opinions. Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez demands the release of Nicolas Maduro and his wife. So what are you hearing?
Well, when they talk about unconstitutional things here in the United States, it's just politics as usual. Nothing that we've done down there last night goes beyond the reach of the president, the military, and law enforcement against an enemy to the United States and basically to the world. So the people who are here are saying that that's political jargon that I don't really listen to. As far as the vice president in Venezuela, see, here's the issue: is that Venezuela is not an ideological nation like, for instance, Afghanistan with the Taliban. So what you have in Venezuela, and I was there 11 years ago on a protection detail where I was detained by the intelligence agency down there when they found out I was former FBI and held for several hours and interrogated. What I'll tell you is that in Venezuela, they're the haves and the have-nots. And the haves are a very small portion of the population, and they're very powerful, and they get all of the power and money that they have through corruption. Meanwhile, the rest of the nation suffers dramatically. Violence is worse than you'll see anywhere else in the world, and poverty is right there with it. So when people like the vice president speak up, I would just warn them that they are also a part of this criminal organization that the leader was just taken out and is now in American hands. They should be very careful what they say, because they could be next on that chopping block.
And Jonathan, opposition leader Maria Corina Machado spoke to our affiliates Fox News recently in an exclusive interview. We'll play a clip in just a moment, but they have appealed to the military to abandon Nicolas Maduro's government and recognise opposition-backed candidate Edmundo Gonzalez. But certainly she came forward in this interview, which basically she was saying that she completely trusts Donald Trump and Marco Rubio. Let's take a listen.
I completely trust the strategy President Trump is developing and his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. They know very well with whom they're dealing with. This is not a legitimate president. This is the head of a criminal structure that was already defeated in a presidential election by landslide. So they know how to deal with these kind of individuals that are criminals, narco-terrorists. And I believe that Maduro will get a very clear picture of what are his options and what's the future for Venezuela.
We certainly are hearing a lot of people saying that he is an illegitimate president. What can you tell us, Jonathan?
Well, I think that's true. And if you look at how the voting occurred there, and really, when you have a dictator like that, and like I said, the have-nots are the majority, by vast majority of the people there. They voted for her. They didn't vote for Maduro, but Maduro rode the heels of their former dictator leader, and so it was just passed down to him. And that's the problem with a lot of these nations where a dictator takes over, is that once they get in power, as soon as it's time for them to die or leave, they will put other people in the place that are part of their either their power vacuum or their criminal enterprise. In this case, it was both. And I think what you see in Central South America and in this region is that cancer has spread all over. And it is all the nations in Central South America are following suit, where they are becoming more and more impoverished, and fewer people are becoming much more powerful, and all of them are pretty much tied in with drug cartels.
What message do you think this is sending to other countries, China, Russia, Iran, for example?
Well, I hope it sends a big message to China and Russia, because their foothold in Venezuela was immense. China, when I was down there, it looked like North Korea in many places, because that's the type of architecture that China goes and builds in other nations. That foothold has now been stopped. And so they need to realize that this president isn't like the president before and many before him, that he's willing to do what it takes. But I think this is a very important signal to go out to other world leaders in this nation. I think Australia and other locations where they've had terrorist attacks should take suit of this, is that it is possible to stop regimes that promote terror and that are criminal enterprises that threaten your nations. In large part, those nations are paper tigers. They know how to, and they can successfully carry out terrorist attacks, but they cannot defend themselves when people stand up against them and cut the heads off of their snakes. And that's what's occurred.
Again, we're hearing mixed reactions, but talk us through, if you don't mind, a bit more about Venezuela, and you've been there, and what it's like in terms of poverty and the divide.
It is, when I was there, and that was 11 years ago, so it only got worse. People were unable to have normal things like toothpaste and toilet paper. But also I would see vehicles pull up and people getting off work without any shoes. They just had nothing except maybe the clothes on their backs. One of the barrios that we were escorting a group through, there was 25 murders a week in there, and all of them go unsolved. 25,000 murders a year in the country is probably a low number. And so the crime that the organized criminal organization or enterprise that Maduro was leading took away the ability for that nation to prosper. So what's on the ground is part of that criminal organization, but it's also tremendous amounts of just street crime and lawlessness. And that's where I think once Maduro is gone and we're able to get people in there and potentially regain the law enforcement in that nation, that things could actually change. Because like I said, it's not ideologically driven. So change in places like Afghanistan would be much more difficult. In Venezuela, people just want to be free from the crime and the poverty. And with Maduro gone, the chance of people being less poor is possible, but it's going to take a lot to clean up the street crime. And one other thing, oil. People say, oh, this is just another war for oil. But I don't think they realize how much oil comes out of Venezuela, and at one point was even into the United States. A large portion of our oil came from Venezuela. And that was taken by Maduro and Chavez before him and used for their profit for this criminal enterprise. So it's very important that people realize that the level of things that are going on in Venezuela, it goes far beyond oil or just Trump being another Bush-era politician. That's not the case here.
Former US Navy SEAL and former FBI Special Agent Jonathan Gilliam, we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.